like to know what you would say to somebody who's suffering from loneliness, and that's quite an ambiguous situation to A, be in. And secondly, what do you say to somebody that's looking to it from you? In my position, it might be mean. The person's, you're mean, you know, you're not making me feel better. And in my position, it's like, I can't make you feel better.
Yeah, that's a big responsibility. So here's what I heard. That person has defined themselves. So that the loneliness has defined who they've become. So that's sort of like a label, right? So if loneliness is how I have chosen to define myself, I can't expect to come to someone else and have them make me happy and take away the loneliness. What I need to do is to look at it a little bit. What I talked about is what meaning, why is it on the top of my list? Why is that how I choose to define myself? It's like we need to unravel it and find out, why are you lonely? Why are you choosing to define yourself by loneliness? Because, you know, that person can work with a relationship coach. A relationship coach isn't going to help them, I think, unless I'm wrong, isn't going to help them be less lonely. It's going to help them understand why are they lonely and what could they choose to do to not to allow it to define themselves and to create possibilities. You know, that I am lonely defined as that evil wolf, that dark side, is to be able to say, what's the opposite of it? I sometimes tell people, take a glass of wine, those that drink wine, martinis, whatever works, is, you know, to say, put all the stuff...
Or a bottle.
Well, I'm going to use a glass, you can use a bottle. Is to take a glass and ask someone to put in all the things, loneliness that they feel. And then sort of tilt the glass over and say, okay, what's the opposite of all that? For each word that's lonely, or for each, what's the opposite of all of it? Because what it does is it helps people see, you know, what's the opposite of loneliness for me? And that's what I would approach as a coach. I'd be able to say, okay, if the opposite of loneliness is this, what can you do to attract more of that? Or what are things around that, and start to map it and work it through. But as a coach, we can't really tell people what to do. We can ask really great questions to have them come out. So I think in that case, if I could be quick, as they're defining themselves.
Well, I think that we had a side conversation. It was really good. That I don't want to say it's just women, but I think when you're in a position where you're giving and you want to give, you also have to learn for yourself, because it's also knowing what you have control over. And I realized I really just have control over myself. I don't have control over anybody. And if that person is choosing to feel lonely, I can acknowledge and I can be that person's friend. I don't necessarily feel I need to cut anyone off, but I can set my own healthy boundaries. And that's a huge learning for me in the workforce, in my personal life, with my parents. How do you set healthy boundaries but not cut anyone off? I don't want to cut my parents off. Right? And I want to hear them, and I want them to be a part of my life, but I'm learning to come up with language that sets those boundaries, those healthy boundaries, so they know in a loving way that they can't cross those boundaries. But it doesn't always have to be the harsh words or anything. It's like, if you know what the boundary is for yourself and you can come up with words for it, you can set those healthy boundaries and not have to necessarily cut the person off, and you can still be there for them. So
I'm going to add something funny, I think. When I facilitate coaching workshops, we teach managers not to take on other people's monkeys, right? People come into an office and they got these monkeys on their shoulders, and they come, oh boss, I have this problem, and they dump their monkeys. And then you find yourself in this office filled with other people's monkeys. Coaching is the same. What you need to do is ask people really good questions to have them reflect, so their brain pathways start to say, oh, what is the opposite? What do I want? And let them take their monkey with them. So if you're a coach, don't own it. It's not yours. You're there to facilitate and enable. And if somebody can't do it, the boundary of saying, you know, I don't know that I'm someone that could help you is very healthy.
See a pattern. Do you notice a pattern in how women are in ambiguity and how men are in ambiguity?
Can I run? That's a great question. I think men and women are different in the way we think and the way we process in general. I couldn't tell you that I'm an expert in knowing about how men and women differ in the way they deal with ambiguity. I think, you know, I talk to some people, if I'm analytical, whether I'm a man or a woman, I'm going to break it down to a million different possibilities and analyze it to death. If I'm someone who's more spiritual or conceptual or probability and go with the flow, I'm probably going to have a completely different approach. So I think it's more how the meaning I put to it, how the interpretation, my beliefs, my upbringing, all of that more than gender. Like I don't know enough. It would be a research.
That would be a nice research.
I love to research.
Because I liked your wolf example. And I kind of realized that I've spent my whole lifetime feeding the bad wolf. Because he's more fun. And you know what? It's like my good wolf is no fun. And the bad wolf likes to have fun, but the good wolf has got no ambiguity because it's always, you know what the right thing is. You know what the answer is, you know what the question is, you know it's good for you. So the good wolf has got no ambiguity. But the bad wolf, who's a lot of fun, you just don't know what's going to happen on the other end of that.
He's trouble.
He's trouble too.
Yeah, so like, what do? Do you just keep feeding the bad wolf and having fun, or how do you move to the good wolf? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. So I painted the bad wolf, in ambiguity about a dark side. A bad wolf could be mischief, could be fun. I agree with you. So if you're defining good and bad wolf, if that's your question, you can go on the bad wolf side. I was painting it in a way that brings us more darkness and more sadness and ambiguity in a place where we don't see possibilities, where I sit at home rather than come to a networking event. I'll never meet anybody, or I'm going to get cut in that merger. I saw it more that way. But if you choose to twist it and the good wolf is the boring one and the evil wolf, that's a whole different conversation, a whole different talk. But stay in it if it feeds you and you're happy.
Well, it feeds me very well.
I think we know which wolf he's talking about.